The bullet grazed my shoulder before I even saw the barrel of the gun in her manicured hand. "You built on my property line," Karen Whitfield screamed, the pistol still shaking in her grip. I pressed my palm against the wound, blood soaking through my shirt, staring at the woman who ran our HOA like a personal kingdom. 6 months earlier, I never imagined a dispute over a fence could end with me bleeding on my own driveway. My name is Aiden Cole, and this is the story of how a tyrant in a floral blazer nearly destroyed my life, and how I destroyed hers instead. I bought my house on Larkspur Court because it felt like the fresh start I needed after my divorce. Quiet cul-de-sac, good schools nearby, friendly neighbors, or so I thought. What the listing agent never mentioned was Karen Whitfield, president of the Larkspur Homeowners Association for 11 consecutive years. She ran unopposed every election, mostly because nobody dared to challenge her. The woman who challenged her once, I later learned, moved out within a year. At first, Karen seemed almost charming. She brought over a fruit basket the day I moved in. "Welcome to Larkspur," she said, smiling too wide. "We have standards here. I'm sure you'll fit right in." I didn't think much of it then. I should have. The first warning came 3 weeks later. A citation taped to my door for grass exceeding regulation height. My lawn was 2 inches over the HOA's absurd 1/4 inch tolerance. I laughed it off, mowed the lawn, and figured that was the end of it. It wasn't. Next came a citation for my mailbox, apparently the wrong shade of black. Then my porch light bulb was too warm in color temperature, according to a rule I'd never even seen in the HOA handbook. Each fine was small, $50 here, $75 there, but they added up fast. I started keeping copies of every notice, every email, every photo Karen's compliance team sent me. Something told me I'd need them someday. My neighbor Denise warned me over the fence one afternoon while watering her flowers. "She does this to everyone eventually," Denise whispered, "especially people she thinks she can push around." "Why doesn't anyone fight back?" I asked. Denise just shook her head. "You've never seen what happens when someone tries." That should have scared me more than it did. A month later, Karen showed up unannounced while I was building a small storage shed in my backyard. "That structure violates setback requirements," she announced, clipboard in hand like a weapon. I showed her my approved building permit from the city. "The city doesn't run this neighborhood, Aiden." "I do." Those words stuck with me. "I do. Not the HOA board. Not our community. I complied anyway, moving the shed 2 feet to appease her, just to keep the peace. It didn't work. Nothing ever satisfied her for long. The following week, a new fine arrived, $200 for unauthorized landscaping alterations. For moving the shed, she demanded I move. I finally understood, with Karen, compliance wasn't the goal. Control was. I started recording our conversations after that, keeping a dated folder on my laptop labeled simply Karen. Little did I know that folder would one day sit as Exhibit A in a courtroom. Meanwhile, Karen's harassment spread beyond me. She fined a retired veteran 3 doors down for flying his American flag outside of designated display hours. She threatened a young couple with foreclosure liens over a garden gnome collection. Nobody organized against her because everyone was afraid of being her next target. Fear, I realized, was the real HOA rulebook, unwritten but enforced ruthlessly. Then came the fence. I'd hired a licensed surveyor to mark my property line before installing a privacy fence for my dog. Karen appeared within an hour of the crew starting work, blocking the gate with her SUV. "This fence violates our aesthetic guidelines," she snapped, though no such fence existed in the handbook's list of restrictions. I showed her the surveyor's report. She barely glanced at it. "I don't care what some surveyor says. I know where the line is." That single sentence was the first crack in her story because she was wrong, and the survey proved it. I kept building. She kept fuming, snapping photos, muttering about consequences. 2 days later, my dog Milo went missing from the yard. I searched for hours, panic rising, until Denise texted me a photo. Milo, wandering 3 streets over, near Karen's house. When I went to retrieve him, Karen's husband refused to meet my eyes. She said the fence wasn't secure enough, he mumbled. She let him out. For his own safety. That wasn't safety. That was a message. I said nothing that day, but something in me shifted, from frustration to resolve. If Karen wanted a war fought with rules and paperwork, I would become better at both than she ever was. What I didn't know yet was that Karen had a secret of her own. One that would eventually bring her entire kingdom crashing down. I hired my own attorney, a sharp woman named Priya Shah who specialized in HOA disputes and clearly enjoyed a good fight. Most people fold before it gets to me, Priya said, scanning my folder of citations. You didn't fold. Good. She flagged something immediately. Several of Karen's fines cited a 2021 amendment that wasn't in the recorded HOA bylaws. If this amendment doesn't legally exist, Priya said, every fine tied to it is unenforceable. I felt something like hope for the first time in months. I requested the HOA's official meeting minutes through a formal records request, as was my right as a homeowner. Karen stalled for 3 weeks, citing administrative delays. When the minutes finally arrived, entire sections were redacted in black marker, badly, unevenly, by hand. Priya laughed out loud when she saw it. That's not a redaction. That's a confession. We requested the unredacted originals from the county records office instead, bypassing Karen entirely. While we waited, Karen escalated again, this time going after my finances directly. A letter arrived claiming I owed $1,400 in accumulated compliance fees, threatening a lien on my house. I'd paid every fine I believed was legitimate. This new number didn't add up. Priya requested a full accounting of the HOA's finances, another right guaranteed under state law. Karen's treasurer, a nervous man named Gary, accidentally sent us the wrong spreadsheet. It wasn't the HOA budget. It was Karen's personal expense report, submitted for reimbursement from the HOA account. A weekend at a lake house, new patio furniture, a board retreat that was really a solo spa trip. All paid for with homeowner dues, all disguised under vague line items like community enhancement. I stared at the screen, stunned. This wasn't just a control freak anymore. This was theft. Priya's eyes lit up. Now we're not just fighting fines. We're fighting fraud. We didn't act immediately. Evidence needed to be airtight, not just suspicious. Priya quietly filed a request with the county to formally audit the HOA's financial records. Audits take time. In the meantime, I had to keep living next to a woman who now clearly saw me as an enemy. Karen's tactics grew pettier and stranger, as if she sensed the ground shifting beneath her. She organized a community meeting, specifically to discuss my pattern of noncompliance, inviting the whole neighborhood. I showed up anyway, calm, holding a folder of my own. Mr. Cole has violated 17 HOA regulations since moving in, Karen announced to the room, voice dripping with false concern. 16 of which were resolved within 48 hours, I replied. And one of which was a fence you personally blocked with your car. A ripple of laughter moved through the room. Karen's smile tightened. Denise caught my eye from the back row and gave the smallest, proudest nod. After the meeting, an elderly resident named Mr. Halloran approached me quietly. I've lived here 19 years, he said. She's done this to 6 families before you. All of them left. Why didn't anyone report her? I asked. We tried once. She controls who counts the votes at HOA elections. That detail lodged itself in my mind like a splinter. Who counts the votes? I mentioned it to Priya, who immediately requested election records for the last 3 HOA presidential votes. Karen's office claimed the records were lost in a server migration. Convenient. Too convenient. Priya smiled the way lawyers smile when someone hands them exactly what they need. Missing votes. Missing amendments. Missing budget lines. She's not sloppy, Aiden. She's been doing this for years. 2 weeks later, the county audit request was approved, and a formal financial review of the HOA began. Karen found out almost immediately, HOA presidents always seem to have inside sources. Her behavior shifted overnight, from aggressive to eerily sweet. She left a basket of muffins on my porch with a note. "Let's put this behind us, neighbor." I didn't touch the muffins. I photographed the note and added it to the file. Denise warned me not to relax. She's never nice unless she's scared. Denise was right. Within days, Karen tried a new angle entirely. She filed a formal complaint with the city claiming my home's addition, the one with the valid permit, was structurally unsafe. A city inspector arrived, clearly annoyed at being sent on a wild goose chase. He found nothing wrong, but noted in his report that the complaint appeared to lack legitimate basis. That report, too, went straight into Priya's growing case file. Karen then tried the neighbors, going door to door, spreading rumors that I was under federal investigation. It wasn't true, but rumors don't need truth, only fear, to spread through a small neighborhood. Some neighbors started avoiding eye contact with me at the mailbox. Denise didn't. "I know a smear campaign when I see one," she told me. "I've watched her run 3 of them." I began to understand the true size of what I was up against. Not one petty woman, but a pattern spanning over a decade. Priya requested testimony from previous residents Karen had driven out, tracking down 2 of them through old HOA rosters. Both agreed to give sworn statements about similar harassment, fines, and intimidation. The case was no longer just about me. It was about everyone Karen had ever crushed under her clipboard. And Karen, sensing the walls closing in, was about to make the biggest mistake of her life. The audit findings came back 3 weeks later, and they were worse than even Priya expected. Over $38,000 in HOA dues had been funneled into Karen's personal accounts over 4 years, disguised as community expenses. The county auditor flagged it for potential referral to the district attorney's office. Priya called me the moment she got the report. "Aiden, this isn't a lawsuit anymore. This is criminal." I should have felt triumphant. Instead, I felt a strange, heavy dread. Karen cornered was more dangerous than Karen comfortable. That dread proved right within 48 hours. Karen requested an emergency HOA board meeting, and this time, she didn't invite me. Denise, still a board member, texted me updates in real time from inside the meeting. "She's trying to push an emergency vote to remove your fence herself," Denise wrote. "Says it's a safety hazard." I raced home from work, arriving just as a small crew Karen had personally hired began cutting into my fence posts. "Stop! This is my property," I shouted, phone already out, recording everything. Karen stood on the sidewalk, arms crossed, wearing the calm smile of someone who believed she'd already won. "The board authorized this," she said. "You'll get your due process at the next hearing." There was no hearing. There was no vote. I have a survey proving this fence is legal. Surveys can be wrong, Aiden. Surveyors don't work for me, Karen. They work for the truth. Something in her composure cracked at that line, just slightly, just enough for me to notice. I stepped between the crew and the fence post they were about to remove. "You need to leave my property right now," I said, voice steady despite my racing heart. That's when Karen reached into her oversized designer purse. For one surreal second, I thought she was reaching for her phone. She wasn't. The gun came up fast, and I barely registered the sound before the pain hit my shoulder. I stumbled back against my own half-cut fence, blood already soaking through my shirt. The construction crew scattered, shouting, one of them already dialing 911. Karen stood frozen, staring at the gun in her hand like it belonged to someone else. "You attacked me," she said, voice shaking, eyes wild. "You were going to attack me." I hadn't moved an inch except to protect my property line. My phone, still recording, had captured everything, every word, every second, every shot. Denise came sprinting from her house, phone already pressed to her ear, screaming my address to a dispatcher. Sirens arrived within minutes, red and blue lights washing over Karen's pale, panicked face. "She shot me," I managed to say to the first officer who reached me. "It's on video. All of it." Karen tried to speak first, always the instinct of someone used to controlling the narrative. "He was threatening me and my crew. I felt unsafe. "Ma'am, please step back," the officer said, already noticing the gun still loose in her hand. Paramedics loaded me into an ambulance as Karen continued talking, digging her own hole deeper with every sentence. At the hospital, the bullet turned out to have only grazed muscle, painful but not life-threatening. A detective visited my room within hours, notebook ready. "We have your video," he said. "We also have 3 witness statements from the construction crew. Her story isn't holding up." For the first time since I'd moved to Larkspur Court, I let myself believe this nightmare might actually end in my favor. Karen was arrested that same night, charged with aggravated assault with a deadly weapon. Her mugshot hit the local news by morning, floral blazer replaced by an orange jumpsuit. The story spread fast. HOA president shoots homeowner over fence dispute. Reporters started calling my house, and for once, I had nothing to hide. I gave one interview, calm and factual, letting the video evidence speak louder than my words ever could. Priya used the sudden media attention to formally file our civil lawsuit the very next morning. The complaint listed everything: harassment, fraud, false citations, wrongful property damage, and now, assault with a deadly weapon. Karen's attorney tried to paint the shooting as self-defense against an aggressive homeowner. But the video didn't lie, and neither did the 4 eyewitnesses from the fence crew. One crew member, a young man named Marcus, gave a statement that became the case's turning point. "She told us beforehand," Marcus said, "that if he tried to stop us, we should just let her handle it." That single sentence transformed the case from reckless panic into premeditated intimidation. The district attorney's office, already circling due to the financial audit, added weapons charges to the growing pile. Karen's bail hearing revealed something none of U.S. expected. This wasn't her first firearm incident. 8 years earlier, in a different state, she'd been investigated for brandishing a weapon during a different HOA dispute. The case had been quietly settled out of court, sealed, buried, until now. Priya's investigator found the old case file within days, and it became devastating supporting evidence. Karen wasn't a first-time offender losing her temper. She was a repeat pattern finally catching up to her. The HOA board, terrified of liability, voted unanimously to suspend Karen from all official duties pending investigation. Denise, still on the board, called an emergency election, the first fair one Larkspur had seen in over a decade. Former victims Karen had driven away started reaching out on their own, offering statements without being asked. A pattern of 11 years of intimidation was assembling itself, testimony by testimony, into an undeniable portrait. Karen's husband, Roger, finally broke his silence in a deposition, visibly exhausted by years of covering for her. "She's been like this since I met her," he admitted. "Control was never a strategy. It was who she is." He confirmed the missing HOA funds had paid for vacations he'd assumed were from her consulting work. There was no consulting work. There had never been any consulting work. Roger filed for divorce the same week, unwilling to be tied to what was unraveling around her. Karen, isolated for the first time in years, began making increasingly erratic public statements. She posted a rambling video online insisting the entire neighborhood was conspiring against her. The video, meant to garner sympathy, instead went viral for entirely the wrong reasons. Local news picked it up again. Disgraced HOA president's bizarre meltdown goes viral. Even people who'd never lived on Larkspur Court now recognized her face. The criminal trial was set for early spring, and Priya insisted our civil case run parallel to it. "Strike while the evidence is public and fresh," she said. "Momentum matters." Jury selection for the criminal trial took 3 days, both sides carefully vetting for bias. When the trial began, the video of the shooting played first, silencing the courtroom completely. Karen's own recorded voice, "I don't care what some surveyor says. I know where the line is," played as evidence of premeditated intent. Marcus took the stand and repeated his account without wavering under cross-examination. The prosecution painted a clear picture. Years of unchecked power, culminating in violence when that power was finally challenged. The defense's argument crumbled further each day, unable to explain away video, testimony, and a financial paper trail. On the fourth day, the prosecution introduced the sealed file from the prior state. The earlier weapon incident Karen thought was buried forever. Her attorney objected furiously, but the judge allowed it as evidence of pattern and intent. I watched Karen's face in that moment, the first time I saw real fear behind her eyes instead of performance. She finally took the stand herself, against her lawyer's visible reluctance. Under cross-examination, Priya, brought in as a consulting attorney for the criminal side too, dismantled her story piece by piece. You said you felt threatened, yet you brought a hired crew and a firearm to a fence dispute. Explain that. Karen stammered, contradicting her own earlier statements from the police report. I was defending my community, she finally said, voice cracking. Your community? Priya repeated. Or your control over it? The courtroom went silent. Karen had no answer. Closing arguments took less than an hour combined. The evidence had already done the real work. The jury deliberated for just under 5 hours before returning a verdict. Guilty on all counts. Aggravated assault with a deadly weapon and reckless endangerment. Karen's knees buckled slightly as the verdict was read. The first genuine emotion I'd seen from her in months. Sentencing was set for 6 weeks later, but the criminal conviction alone reshaped everything else. Our civil case, still pending, suddenly had an ironclad criminal verdict backing every claim we'd made. Karen's lawyer, sensing the writing on the wall, reached out to Priya requesting a settlement to avoid a public civil trial. Priya laughed at the first offer, $40,000, laughably small for the damage inflicted. We rejected it and proceeded toward mediation, backed by the criminal verdict and the financial fraud audit. The HOA itself, terrified of collective liability, voted to formally expel Karen from any position, present or future. A new HOA president was elected, Mr. Halloran, the quiet 19-year resident who'd first warned me about Karen's history. Under new leadership, the board issued a public apology to every homeowner Karen had wrongfully fined over the years. Refunds were issued. Absurd bylaws were repealed. The 2021 amendment, that never legally existed, was formally struck from the record. Denise organized a small neighborhood gathering to celebrate. The first Larkspur cookout in over a decade that didn't feel tense. Mediation for the civil suit stretched over 3 sessions, Karen's team growing more desperate each time. Facing certain loss at trial, her lawyer finally proposed a number that stopped the room. $300,000, covering damages, fraud, and medical costs. Priya turned to me, waiting for my decision, though I could tell she already knew what I'd say. I thought about the fines, the fear, my missing dog, the bullet still healing in my shoulder. I thought about every family Karen had quietly driven out before anyone dared stand up to her. We accept, I said, on one condition. The settlement includes a public admission of the fraud and assault. Karen's lawyer hesitated, then nodded. There was no leverage left to negotiate with. The settlement was finalized on a rainy Tuesday morning, Karen's signature shaky beneath the final line. She wouldn't look at me once during the entire signing, staring instead at some fixed point on the table. As she stood to leave, escorted by her attorney, she finally spoke, voice quiet and hollow. I only ever wanted to protect property values, she muttered, almost to herself. No, I said. You wanted control, and you finally lost it. She didn't respond. There was nothing left to say. Karen received 18 months in county jail for the assault, alongside mandatory restitution for the misappropriated HOA funds. She lost her home on Larkspur Court within the year, unable to keep up with the very dues she once weaponized against others. I still live on Larkspur Court, fence finally finished, dog safe in the yard, and for the first time since I moved in, the neighborhood finally feels like home.